The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebayo and Tim Vickery.
Welcome to the Global Soccer Interactive. It's Thursday's version of the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast, and it's Legendino. You're looking sharp, mate. What warrants this great occasion?
Cold. These are my only cold weather clothes are whistles. So okay, I do love a whistle.
Yeah. Too hot for a whistle in Nigeria, where Atulani Oyewumi, who's a football content creator in Nigeria, joins us as ever. People don't wear like English European suits, do they? Really?
No, I wore it one time, and they asked me if I was going for an interview, so I learned my lesson very quickly.
Oh, that's so disappointing to me. So disappointing.
But
yeah.
For births and deaths and marriages, for marriages they don't wear a suit. No. We wear our suits.
For we call it a white wedding, which might not be the traditional name, but for a white wedding you would wear a suit. But traditional wedding you'd wear your traditional. For funerals you'd wear your traditional as well. So suits are relatively few and far between, except for in a conference room like I'm in right now, funny enough.
And are any Nigerians allowed to go to these white weddings?
Absolutely. We don't discriminate.
Okay, I'm just checking. You said you have to wear a suit, whatever it is. Anyway, look, lots to talk about, as I say. And if you'd like to join in, it's a Global Soccer Interactive. You know, all the ways to join in are right on your screen there. Send us a message. We'll bring you into the conversation. If you've got questions about the football ahead, lots of football to be had at the weekend, which we start by looking backwards. Do you mind, Tim?
I think we should. I think we should look back on probably the most watched AFCON final there has ever been, and the fallout from this. And there's a lot to get into there, isn't there?
Yeah, Atulani, you are on the continent, where the action was taking place. What did you make of it?
The most bonkers ending to a final I've witnessed in my viewing history. And obviously I'm only 23, so that viewing history is not particularly long. But I can't imagine a final ever ending with such chaos or controversy. And it was nail-biting because we generally didn't know how it was going to end. From when Senegal's goal being disallowed was relatively bogus, because Hakimi initiates contact. It's return. I can't remember the name of the defender that headed onto the woodwork, but he brushes him off. Hakimi falls to the floor and the referee blows the whistle. And we're all like, there's no way. And he did blow the whistle before the goal, in fairness, but it was a second later. And we're thinking, the refs have started again, because we'll get into Nigeria's grievances with the Ghanaian referee, and the decision to let a Ghanaian referee the Nigerian football team is just beyond mind.
I did think that when I saw it was a Ghanaian. I did think,
I've never seen anything like it. And then for them to go the other end and get a relatively cheap penalty, which you are questioning Diouf as to, because Diouf has been phenomenal. You're like, why would you put yourself in that position? Why are you putting your hand there in the first place? But it's a bit soft. So I understand why the Senegalese were so upset, but to walk off the pitch it's one of those moments where we're going to remember where we were and what we were doing when we watched that game. Because to see them actually take a stand and walk off, and it was a stand against corruption feels big, but when you see quote unquote cheating in sport, it's important that you don't just let it slide or trust in. I keep using the example of Toto Wolff saying, Mercedes will be back next year, when Hamilton got robbed in 2021. There's no guarantee. You have to fight for the current one before you worry about, the next one. So back to this focus, it was the talk of the office the next day. Everyone is shell-shocked by it, but the whole of Nigeria became Senegalese for a day because of what happened in our game. So everyone was also very happy that justice was served in the end.
And they do cook a mean jollof in Senegal as well. The capital is Dakar. What more can we say? They're good people, these Senegalese. So if they were robbed, it would be quite something. Tim, you've got a theory, though, that there was one player in particular that saved the day, saved the team, saved the tournament.
I think it saved everything, Sadio Mane, because I think the presence of mind that he had. He's playing, and he said this is his last AFCON. He's playing in the final. He's been running around for 100 minutes, and he is cooler and calmer and more rational than his coach. Extraordinary. I think what he did was magnificent, and he saved the whole thing, because there will be consequences for Senegal walking off the field. It could have turned out much, much worse than it did. Instead of which, we have a happy ending and a triumphant ending. I think it's just a magnificent moment of leadership. And we were talking last week about some of the negative things that the idols can bring to the African teams, in that they get too many privileges, and they don't have to cover the ground. They're
Respect
cut
for your elders is what
But this was the other extreme. This was the elder showing the wisdom of true leadership, keeping calm when all around him were losing their heads. I thought it was just magnificent what he did.
Atalani, what was the view from Nigeria and from you?
No, I quite agree, because at the time I was kind of torn again, in the sense of taking a stand and letting them know that the world is not stupid. I think between CAF, the Moroccan FA, it was almost like they were insulting our intelligence, from the towels being stolen to the poor logistics of the transport to the Senegal team training outside the hotel. It was just, you're hearing thing after thing after thing. It's like, do they know that we can see them? Do they know that social media is letting us know that all these things are happening? So for him to forgo all of that in that moment and just stand up and say, let's play, let's see this out, irrespective of the result. Because on a normal day, obviously, funny enough, Brahim has done this Panenka before. I saw a clip of him doing it for Spain in 2016 or 17. Or was it an under 17 tournament, rather? He's not that old. And I was like, oh, so that's Panenka is normal, but you'd expect him to score. He's the top scorer of the tournament, and they lose, and there's uproar everywhere. But just the way God would have it is that he says, no, let's play. And he, as you say, he saved the image of African football. It shouldn't be that way, because these kind of things have happened before, not to the same extent, but there have been controversies before. But we all know how it would have been painted as a taint on the game. There's already, remember when Carrick said it wasn't a major tournament? There's already these mutterings around, and this would have given validation to every critic ever that has questioned the tournament. So for him to come out and say, let's stand up and face it like men, and for them to then end up on the right side of history is just magnificent. And he's a living legend of the game, and I did a video on it on my page. It's important to give them flowers while they are still active and playing, because we have a tendency to underappreciate players in real time. Then in 10, 15 years, we're like, oh, Mane was incredible. But while he's here, it's a two-time AFCON winner, the Champions League, Bundesliga, Premier League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup winner, and a Premier League Golden Boot winner. And he is the primary reason they won this tournament, both on and off the pitch. So nothing.
I saw the Brazilian TV channel that was showing it. We're arguing, and I've never heard this before over here. We're arguing that this is the second best continental competition in the world.
After the Copa de Libertadores, or
no, after the Euros.
Oh, after the Euros.
So
they had it above Copa America.
Above Copa America. Yeah, you probably wouldn't get that elsewhere in South America, but Brazil looks down a little bit on the Copa America, and
they've been struggling with Copa America.
Yeah, and just because now that we're seeing more of it, and as I said, this is the most watched AFCON final ever, which is why it's so great that in the end it did have the right ending and a happy ending. But they're also seeing the strength in depth that African football has. And it's that strength in depth, I think, that makes, for all of the problems it brings, it makes the 48-team World Cup inevitable, doesn't it? Because in the 32 team, there's just not enough places for Africa. There's not enough. So what you're getting year after year is a different collection of African sides in a World Cup. So that the sides are not accumulating the experience of World Cup after World Cup after World Cup. Now that changes, doesn't it? Because with Africa having more places, and granted, even with more places, Nigeria can't make it. But this again, that just highlights the strength in depth of African football. And I think people are seeing this as never before, which is why it's so important that we got a happy ending in the final. And the farce becomes like a prologue to the right team winning and the right player winning. Although, just a word on the penalty. surely in that moment, because this isn't a normal penalty, is it? It's not a normal penalty. Number one, because it's in the last minute, and number two, because there's this massive hold-up. Isn't this a moment for Hakimi?
I thought the same thing, because remember Hakimi taking the winning penalty at the World Cup and doing the little penguin waddle. I thought surely Hakimi steps up, but I understood, okay, Brahim's the top scorer. He's led us this. He's popped up in big moments. I was like, okay, I'm not too mad at it. And then when he Panenkas, I'm like, it's just not possible. It's not possible that in that moment, the 107th minute, after being called, was it 107th? May have even been longer. After being called for a 10-15 minute delay. I was honestly thinking when they came back, this is me being an idealistic idiot, but I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if Morocco put the penalty wide on purpose? Wouldn't that be a wonderful gesture? And then we can decide who's best in extra time. I was honestly thinking that. Wouldn't that be fabulous? And then when he came up and did it, I thought, did he do that on purpose? And then I remembered it was Diaz, whose histrionics had got the penalty given in the first place. So I thought, my theory that he'd done it on purpose lasted about 2 milliseconds. And you think there's just too much this is a trophy that the Atlas Lions, we've heard it all game. They haven't won it in 50 years, home tournament. Surely there's just too much at stake for what would be the greatest fair play moment of all time. And I feel like if he was trying to miss, I don't know, because there's some people saying, there were certain signals, Mane spoke to his ex-coach that did, but I just don't buy it. It's too big an occasion for him. Then the tears start flowing, his coach starts having to go at him, so I'm like, they clearly weren't on the same page. Like, I think he was aura farming, as our generation said. He was looking for TikTok edits, and it would have been one of the coldest moments.
Sorry, can you run that one past me again? Aura farming.
Aura farming. Yeah, that's the
What's that mean? Aura farming.
Just told you what it meant. Just told you what it meant.
Yeah, but you got to explain these things slowly. I'm 60 for crying out loud. Do it slowly.
So aura is like, you've either got it or you don't. Aura is your presence, your being. Like, some people have aura, like a cool player. Like Ronaldo has aura. That's a cool player. Whereas Gareth Barry, maybe not so much. So he was trying to add to his aura, like his rep, and he would end up in a bunch of edits, TikToks for the rest of his lifetime, and everyone would cling on to that moment. Like Zlatan is known as someone that has aura, kind of thing. So he was literally aura farming, and it cost him everything. So, yeah. Right.
So by this definition, if one has to aura farm, that means that you don't have aura, because it's something you don't have to work at. So
you could argue that if you got it, you don't have to fight for it. It should come naturally.
Exactly. What are the repercussions? What are the repercussions of this for Morocco? What's it like in African football? Because over here, it's like, and I'm always stunned by this. It's almost like the worst thing you can do is lose a final. It's like better to go out in the early stages than to lose a final. I don't really understand his mentality, but that's
because it's a weird one. Because Ghana, for instance, they didn't make the tournament. So they're just chilling this whole time, whereas we have this emotional roller coaster just to end up with nothing like they have for not making the tournament, which doesn't feel right, but it is what it is. Like, Morocco and Ghana have the same thing.
With 6 months to go to the World Cup, or less now, is this a massive, massive blow? Because that's the way it's been taken in Brazil, because Brazil are Morocco's first opponents. Oh, look at them. They're an absolute mess. They're in chaos. And I'm thinking, well, they were one penalty kick away from winning the thing. But do you see this as a massive, massive blow? Does this leave Morocco on the floor in the build-up to the World Cup?
I think it's a tough one. I feel like it's more so they have to block out the outside noise, because the world is fairly, well, my Twitter world, which is probably a smaller bubble, is very united against Morocco right now, because it's like the treatment from the fans. Again, the towel stealing is the one I think has alienated a lot of people.
Yeah, what was that? Tell us what that was, because this is first time hearing about it. I don't know about you, Tim.
So essentially, in the semi-final against Nigeria, Nigeria's goalkeeper Stanley Nwabali had his towel stolen from the goal. And obviously, to keepers dry their hands, dry your face, which is a completely normal thing. And they stole his towel from the goal because it's minor advantages. It's like the Kaizen method. Just 1%, 1%, those things make a little difference, and it can ruin your flow state, essentially, get you out of your rhythm. So they did that. And in the final, they tried to repeat it, but Senegal's third choice keeper stood with Edouard Mendy's towel the whole game. And they weren't ball boys. I think they were flag bearers. The Moroccan flag bearers literally draped him on the floor at the point. There's videos of him being dragged on the floor, holding onto the towel. And they're all right, like he's holding the towel, then one will come from the left and try and steal it, he'll dodge. One will come from the other way and try and steal it. And their number 10, I can't remember his name, he went to the hotel afterwards to apologize because he too was trying to intercept the passes between the third keeper and Mendy, which is just, it's ridiculous. There was a corner where Hakimi took the towel and threw it behind the advertising board. And one of the Senegalese players jumped over and got it back because it's like, keepers are allowed to have towels. I think there's a rule about where it can hang in the goal, because obviously the integrity of the goal itself, but you're allowed to have a towel. So it was such a nonsense thing for them to be so hung up on. And that combined with things I mentioned before, such as the hotel, such as the training facility, and such as only assigning them 2,800 tickets in a 69,000-seater stadium for the Senegalese fans, which is, again, not illegal, but sporting integrity kind of thing. They've alienated a lot of people. So in terms of their performance going into the World Cup, they've got to block out all that noise because the world is not on their side. Brazil will have a lot of support going into that game, especially because it's the World Cup's in America. That's much easier for the South American crowd to get to than Africans needing visas to get to. Although, depending on the country, different.
And I suspect probably much more Brazilians in the States, in North America generally, than
and feeling very good about themselves because the only defeat that Senegal have suffered in a long time was against Brazil in some stadium that probably should be in Woolwich, but instead has moved to north of London in November when Brazil beat Senegal 2-0 and beat them well. I mean, they tore them apart in the first half. Yeah. So Brazil come out of this looking quite good. How does African football come out of the whole tournament looking?
I honestly think no publicity is bad publicity in the long run. In the short run, it's not ideal, but in the long run, you're going to tune into Brazil-Morocco. Even if Morocco were playing someone else, you would have tuned into that game, or you would have had your eyes or ears, I pointed to my ears peeled to that game, because now you're curious to see how they do. Same thing with Senegal. Same thing with, I almost said Nigeria, imagine. Same thing with Congo if they get there. Same thing with Ghana. You're now seeing, okay, there are world-class players at the top littered across African football. Whether that's there are top-level players. Let me not throw around the term world-class. Vissas for Congo, Mbeumo for Cameroon, Senegal have Mane. So there are enough players to pique your interest and make sure that you tune in and see how can these African countries compare to the European countries that we pick up, the South American countries that we pick up. Because beforehand, the caliber of pitches in previous AFCONs has never compared to this. And now we've seen the highest technical floor of any AFCON ever because the pitches allowed for that. The deep-lying playmaking shifts that Iwobi put in this tournament were magnificent. I can't believe he was left out of the team of the tournament because I was almost in awe of what he was capable of. And that's as someone who's watched him play from Arsenal under-16 in person at Colney. So I've never seen him capable of this. But obviously this is him having his burgeoning maturity moment, etc. But back to the question. I think it will be good in terms of visibility. Everyone's going to have greater respect for the African countries, see them as more of a threat. And it's hard to imagine an African country going further than what Morocco did last time, getting to the semi-final. So it feels like anything will be a step down. But I think what we're going to see is more African teams get to the knockout stages. I think the floor has gone up. That's the biggest change. Even if the ceiling hasn't, I think the floor has gone up.
Would that be a flex? That's another one I never understand. Would that be a flex?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a flex, is it?
It would be painful because I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts we can beat any of these. We have the talent to beat any of these African teams. We just have this inability to show it, which is very... Eric Charles had a very good tenure. Obviously, I wish he'd been manager for a bit longer because the football, again, I watched Nigeria win AFCON in 2013. And obviously, I was much younger. My football brain was less developed. We've never played football this good. What we did to Algeria was manhandling. It was the most convincing.
It's a massacre. Yeah.
It was 2-0 on paper, but that game wasn't close at any. So that caliber of performance, if we took that mentality into the Morocco game and we're going to play our football, instead of Eric Chell coming out and say we're going to defend and play on transition, which I didn't think made sense to reveal.
But it is tough to play against them. It's tough to look
They
good
are
against Morocco, isn't it? I mean, they press so well. And the game against Cameroon, they pressed. Beleba didn't see the ball. They just pressed him. And it was hard for Iwobi, wasn't it? And Nigeria tried to move him around to get Iwobi in space.
Because suddenly this is where Iwobi gets scapegoated sometimes, when he's back to doing what I call two-man's jobs. So in the AFCON final against Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, he's up against Kessie, and I can't remember who else was in the Ivorian midfield that day. And it was a two-man midfield we played. Suddenly he's getting overrun. That's where the problem arises. I felt like that watching the Morocco game, because Ndidi was suspended. So suddenly Onyedika and Onyeka from Brentford are not able to replicate what Ndidi offers in that stable base at midfield. And suddenly Iwobi's trying Hollywood passes all the time because there's no one to bounce off of. And we're turning over possession much quicker, which means they're attacking us more frequently, which allowed for a Calvin Bassey monster class. That was one of the greatest performances I've seen from a Nigerian player ever. He refused to concede, as far as I'm concerned. He was like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm not conceding today.
How crucial is the Africa Cup of Nations to African success in future World Cups? It feels like the Euros are in many ways a springboard for European countries ahead of the World Cup. Most remarkably, when Spain won 2 Euros and a World Cup in between as well, it feels like they're connected. The tournament experience and whatnot you've got with that particular squad enables you from one to another. How crucial is that? Because when we're talking about all the negative things of the Africa Cup of Nations, I actually think everything is part of the positive. You can look at things as negative. For example, you ran through the dark arts of Morocco. Well, they're called dark arts when European teams do it, and we all know every nation's got their dark arts. Maybe not. One or two. Well, I won't even name the countries I was thinking of, but most countries have got dark arts, and that's part of getting yourself prepared for a tournament, or establishing yourself in a tournament, or landscaping your mind, or whatever it might be. So, how crucial is not this particular Africa Cup of Nations, but if Africa Cup of Nations succeeds in the future and becomes, an important international tournament, does that push an African team closer to winning the World Cup?
I think the sad thing about your answer is that we're being forced to have to wait and see, simply because they're rumored to be changing the format from every 2 years to every 4. So suddenly we'll see if there's any correlation between the previous winners. Because right now with the Euros, you have a 2-year gap. So there might be turnover within the squad by the time you get to the World Cup. For Senegal now, after winning, the World Cup's, as Tim said, it's in 5 months now. So you'd think they have masses of momentum. It may be a negative effect in terms of the mental side, because they've disengaged, they've achieved their goal. And it's, for instance, there was a tennis match the other day where tennis now has 10-point tiebreakers in the final set of a match. It used to be 7. And Sebastian Offner was 7-1 up, celebrated, thought he'd won, and he had 3 more points to win, ended up losing the match 13-11. Once you've disengaged mentally, it's so hard to get back into that mindset of, okay, now we have another goal. And you do question, will Senegal go into the World Cup having that fully fledged belief that we have to win this? We truly believe we can win this. With a bit of time, perhaps they'd be able to, enjoy this, have some more qualifiers or have some more games and then get back into it. I think the time span might actually be too short for them to go again and really gear themselves up, because they've achieved the goal, or what they would perceive to be the realistic goal.
Nigeria 98 is such a great example of that, isn't it? Because Nigeria 96 in the Olympics were just a terrific side. They really were. And you're thinking, wow, can't wait to see this team in 2 years' time in the World Cup. And then they got to the World Cup and they were strutting around on high heels like they were Pretty Boy Floyd. They just weren't the same team with the same players, but not the same team. Victory brings problems sometimes, doesn't it?
It's hard. Was that another? I think that was another. That was a 3-2 against Spain. I think we drew with Paraguay.
Lost to Paraguay and then lost to Denmark.
Oh yes. So, was that before or after Denmark won the Euros?
Considerably after.
Okay. But yeah, I think
10 years after.
it was Denmark won in '88.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh well, sorry, my time. You can tell I'm born in 2002. That's a little bit before my time.
Yeah, stop mentioning your age as well. You're making me feel even younger.
Or was it? No, it was 92. They won in 92, Denmark.
Okay, not too bad.
Okay, no, mention your age as much as you like in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Can we quickly just look forward? I hope you can stay with us, because we're going to be talking in the second half of this Global Soccer Interactive on whether Spurs should sack Thomas Frank or not. And I'm sure you would love to add your penny's worth into that. I can't wait to hear from it. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this, if you're watching or listening to it, actually, you can join us live. The interactivity is always important for us. And you've got all the details there on your screen on how you can join us, send us a chat, and we'll take it from there. And also, remember, you can also join our WhatsApp group as well, the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast WhatsApp group. You know where to find it. If we could just look ahead very quickly to the Premier League fixtures this weekend. You rattle through them. West Ham, Sunderland. Any thoughts on that, Atalani? From Nigerian perspective, I don't think either of those teams have got much of a following over your side. Although West Ham have got a big following in Ghana. We've spoken to them on the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast.
Is that because of Kudus?
No, I think they had it before Kudus. I don't know where it goes back. They had it before Kudus.
It's just inexplicable, isn't it? It's just one of those connections that have just been formed. Inexplicable.
They had one of the Ayew brothers, no? Before or after Palace? I feel like one of them played for West Ham. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no. One of the Ayews did. Was it Jordan Ayew that played for?
I think Jordan did.
Yeah, I think he might have. Yeah, of course he did. Of course he did.
Because African football fans are very, very loyal. I saw on Twitter, for instance, that Sevilla are currently using the Bayern Leverkusen model, because when Boniface was cooking for Leverkusen, they were interaction farming, because obviously Nigerians would rally behind every time he'd score, and they won their invincible season. Him and Patrick Schick were just rotating, scoring goals every week. Sevilla with Akol Adams are doing the same thing, speaking pidgin, etc. They've got a little Spanish intern writing pigeon tweets. And everyone's lapping it up, which is fair enough.
Do you know what pigeon is, that you, Tim? Pigeon English.
Yeah. I've got more idea about that than I do with interaction farming. There's a lot of farming going on.
No, see, that's the generation we live. Interaction farming is you're doing something relatively inauthentic for the sake of getting interactions. So there are terms we use. So, for instance, rage baiting. So if I came here and said Arsenal are better than 2008 Man United, you'd be able to tell very quickly that I'm rage baiting. I don't truly believe that.
Right. Yes.
So that's what we call rage baiting.
We used to think that wind up was good enough for that concept.
It used to be good enough, but things move on. It's evolution.
There you go.
Ask Charles Darwin or your mate Darwin from Uruguay about that. Aura farming, Kavinka, thank you for this. Aura farming is a slang term popular. Oh, you've read this, have you?
Yeah,
popular on social media for intentionally performing actions, often repetitive, etc., etc. And let's bring Theo Delaney into this conversation, actually, because he's your man when you're talking about life goals. Theo, welcome back.
Hi, how are you all?
Me and Tim are fine, and we've asked Atalani to stay with us because he's a South Londoner, if you know what I mean. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
What, an Arsenal supporter, you mean?
Well, he might have to do. So he wants to join in the conversation.
You see how quickly Theo got that reference? You see how quickly?
Yeah, there must be something in it. And he obviously wants to advocate for Thomas Frank staying at Spurs as long as possible.
Okay, I see what he's done there. Yeah. Got you.
Yeah, don't let me speak for you, Atalani. You can speak for yourself in a moment or two. But Theo, great to have you back on. Absolute pleasure. So, what do you make of the situation that the Spurs are in at the moment?
Well, it's not good. The form is terrible in the Premier League, obviously, and it's gone beyond bad form. It's got to words like humiliating and embarrassing start to enter the lexicon, and that's when things get really bad for a manager and when fans really start to lose it. But of course, we got a great result in the Champions League on Tuesday, and that it makes an enormous difference to the mood of everyone, or everybody connected to the club. And actually, not only a good result, but actually in the first half, a genuinely a very, very good and encouraging performance. So I would say that has lifted the mood, but the underlying mood is bad. Yeah, it's bad.
Is it enough?
Well, it depends what you mean by enough. Enough to save him? No, not on its own. I mean, if he loses at Burnley, he'll be right back to square one. He'll be back to where he was last week, because Burnley, like West Ham, are crap. So I mean, you can't go losing to teams in the bottom three every single week and expect to not attract adverse reaction from the fans and the media and everything else. So no, it's not enough on its own, but it depends whether it's a sign of improvement to come. The trouble is, of course, that he's got these, and it's terrible. It sounds like a scratch record, this, because we were saying exactly the same thing this time last year. But the injuries are incredible. The way they're piling up, it's unbelievable. The amount of really good, important first-team players that are just not available to him. I really feel for him. I'm in a very small minority now that I don't necessarily. I do put the caveat word necessarily in there. I don't necessarily want to see him fired. Most people actually really do want. Most fans that I'm aware of want him out.
Yeah, Tim, what can he be going under? I mean, Thomas Frank is training a team as we speak to face what is clearly a date with destiny. Absolutely vital, this match at Turf Moor, the bleak old Turf Moor. If you've ever been there, you'll know what I mean. And he knows it's do or die. What can he be going through, and what can the players be going through? They cannot, and Theo's kind of hinted it, more or less said it, they cannot lose this one.
No, I've never been as disengaged as I am now as a supporter, because we've seen Theo Tottenham be many things in our time, but the worst one for me is just to be mediocre. And I quite enjoyed the Ange era, because it was just gloriously anarchic, and I think that it's part of our DNA. We are kind of footballing Don Quixotes, and that for me that has to be part of Tottenham. When it is just purely mediocre, for me there's nothing to engage with. The squad is clearly not the best. How much do you think that Frank is a poor fit?
Well, that's what everyone's saying about him, is that he's a poor fit because of the way he sets them up and the way he has them playing. But if you leave him aside for a minute and you look at the squad and you look at the players and you look at the teams they've got to play, I don't think man for man, even setting aside the injuries, I don't think it's much better than a mid-table set of players. And when you factor in the injuries, you're talking about a lower mid-table set of players, and that's where they are. So, that's before you start talking about the manager. What you've said there is what I think a lot of Tottenham fans feel, which is that the manager is guilty. I mean, they sympathise with the lack of quality, they sympathise with the injuries, but they don't sympathise with his tactics. And a lot of the time in big games, he sent them out very negatively. And that is really hard to accept, especially when you go out, and lose to Chelsea and Arsenal and West Ham. I mean, I actually thought they played fine against West Ham and actually could easily have won the game. They're probably slightly the better team. Looked like they were more likely to score the winner. And football's the ridiculous thing about football in these situations is everyone forgets how chaotic and random it is. It's just crazy. In a game like that West Ham game, either side could have won that. If Tottenham had got the late goal, which they could easily have done from a corner, scrambled it in the same way West Ham did, the whole mood, the whole conversation would be different. If they followed that up with a win in the Champions League, they wouldn't even be talking about it really now, Frank. And that's how fine the margins are. I personally,
stepping back for a kind of long-term view, it's not that long ago that the press was full of articles about Tottenham have overtaken Arsenal. Tottenham have become the club that Arsenal wanted to be when Where do you think it went wrong? And for me, obviously COVID is a problem because they couldn't fill the stadium that they spent a lot of money buying. But I think it was already on the slide, wasn't it? I mean, the side that somehow reached the final of the Champions League in 19 was nowhere near as good as the side of 3 years previously and hadn't been invested in at all.
Yeah.
So where do you think that things started to go wrong?
Well, I mean, you've heavily, but everything you've just said points one way, and it points upstairs, but to the board. I mean, we have always had an ownership, and we've got a slightly new regime now. So I'm not necessarily going to condemn the new regime until we know. But we've always had an ownership over the last 25 years that did not prioritise winning. It had business priorities. There's another damning league table. I don't know if you saw it, that Kieran Maguire put out yesterday. It was something all the newspapers got. The one that's you see every team that's been in the Premier League, and from all the losses they've made, and right up at the top are Liverpool, Villa, a few other, Chelsea, obviously, and Man City, because they can just throw it away. That's fine. And then down the bottom of this table are the teams that not only haven't made a loss in that time, they've made colossal profits. Guess who's made the most profits? Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur have made more money in the last 20 years, I think it was, than any other team that's played in the Premier League. So you look at that, you look at what you just said, the lack of investment at that crucial time when Pochettino actually made a team. That's the time when we got ahead of Arsenal. We beat them more often than not. We landed above them in the table about 5 years in a row, I think. And we had a fantastic team. We had a team where 8 or 9 of those players would get into all the other top teams. We haven't got a single player now that would walk into another top team. I mean, the nearest thing we've got to it is Van der Ven, but even he's not going to walk into all the top teams. He may in the future, So you have to look at the ownership and look at their priorities. And people say, oh yeah, but if you look at their transfer spend, it's comparable with a lot of their rivals. That's fine, but not the wages. It's always been the wages that have held us back. Top players don't come, and if one top player doesn't come, then the next one doesn't come, and the next one doesn't come, and you've got a problem. It's not a place that top players go to. Tottenham,
unlike Arsenal, Atalani.
Yeah, some people don't have that issue, unfortunately. Some people pick up the phone and call their boyhood club's manager and ask if they can make their way to the Emirates Stadium. I want to pick up on something Tim said, which is that Tottenham were mediocre. I'm not sure 14th classifies as mediocre personally, but I do understand that this is an improvement from last season. So I'll allow you have it, because finishing 17th, we thought it didn't get any worse. And something Theo hinted at is this obsession with outcome bias, where if one thing goes minorly different and the result changes, the discourse around it changes drastically, which I'm not a fan of. I always use the example of if Szoboszlai does not score a wonder free kick, that he scores 1 in 20 attempts, we don't have this discourse of, Arteta will never win the league, he's too defensive. It's ridiculous to me. As for Tottenham, I do sympathise, because the players, I always think Tottenham should be better than they are in terms of personnel, because I think there is talent in that squad. In terms of setup, he's never had his full squad fit, because ideally you'd have Kudus, you'd have Maddison, you'd have Kulusevski. Have those guys all played a game at the same time this season?
No.
I don't remember them playing one. So I find it hard to judge. His Brentford career has credit in the bank, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I believe in what he achieved. And obviously, there are managers who, they go to these clubs and they're just not cut out for it. We saw it with David United's a very niche example, actually. So I take that with a pinch of salt. But certain managers will excel at lower clubs, go to a bigger club and not do so well. And the same might be true the other way around. People always complain whenever Emery beats Arteta, which is scarily often sometimes. There's this talk of, Arsenal should have never sacked him. And I always take that as somebody not understanding how this game works, in the sense that there is a reason Emery did not survive at Arteta. That doesn't mean at Arsenal, rather. That doesn't mean Arteta would do a better job at Villa. They're just two different jobs. So I think with Frank, the jury is still out. It's too soon to say, because Tottenham have been dysfunctional before. They've had issues with Mourinho. They've had issues with Postecoglou. They've had issues with Nuno Espirito Santo. So it's just been another manager is almost too easy. And I also think there's actually a scarcity of top-level managers, which a lot of clubs are suffering from. And I say that because 360 TV did an article on this where they said, if you look at the big 6 clubs and look at their managers 20 years ago, how many of those clubs can say they have a better manager conclusively? I'm not going to say Arteta is better than Arsene Wenger, but obviously I'm very happy with Mikel Arteta. United fans absolutely are not going to say anyone's better than Sir Alex Ferguson. Liam Rosenior is not better than Jose Mourinho. I think it was Glenn Hoddle. Maybe I'm a little bit off. Maybe Hoddle or Redknapp in that period for Tottenham. They are definitely better than what you have now. Liverpool had Benitez, who I would actually give the nod over Arne Slot, even though he didn't win a Premier League title. So there is that problem of, it's very easy to say, oh, get rid. Where do you actually go? And are you going in the name of, oh, we want to win now? Because you just won the Europa League, so it can't be about trophies. Because people were telling me Tottenham had a better season than Arsenal because of a trophy. And now look, because if it's not a sustainable growth, if the squad is not actually practically building towards something, trophies show where your club, or should show where your club is at, not be an anomaly. And for Tottenham, it's very obvious that trophy was an anomaly. They were not of the ilk. It's funny because they're actually top 5 in the Champions League, so I don't want to go too far because they actually do have a bit to smile about. But yeah, I think sustainability.
Yeah, I don't hear anybody in my side of North London talking about Tottenham and their Champions League or Europa League or European. Everybody's concerned about
whatever happens now, it's going to end very, very soon, isn't it?
Well, we know that as well.
This team in the Champions League is not sustainable.
And the Premier League part is going to end in tears very, very soon, is what people are talking about. But I've missed out on who they're talking about currently, Theo, as a prospective replacement for Thomas Frank. I heard some nonsense the other day. Who was it though? Oliver Glasner. I can't see that in any case, but who do Tottenham fans that you speak to at least want to see as a replacement to Thomas Frank if and when the inevitable happens?
Well, I do think there is a lack of top managers out there, and there is no obvious candidate. People have talked a lot about stopgap people. They've talked about Robbie Keane, who's doing well in the Hungarian league. They've talked about completely seriously talked about bringing Harry Redknapp back for the rest of the season. Every now and then Glenn Hoddle gets a mention. Some people are really cross that we didn't sack him and get Carrick before Man United got in there. They're saying that in the light of one result that Man United got. So,
but it was a good one though. It was a good one.
It was a good one.
And if you saw that at the Tottenham Stadium taking on Man City.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now.
Right. To be fair, we always beat Man City, but
I was going to say it's a badge of honor for any Tottenham manager to beat. You've got to. It's rude not to.
Yeah, you have to beat Man City. But so I actually, it's a good question because I don't hear anyone talk. I mean, the top managers are available. Obviously, Alonso is available now, and everybody talks about him linked to any top job because he seems to be the top man available. Xavi, the other Xavi, who was manager at Barcelona, has been around a while, desperate for a job. Yeah, but lots of people say get him. He'd be amazing. How do you know? He could easily look at all the people who've already failed. Look at Conte and Mourinho and the rest of it. I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to step in and be brilliant. And we do fire managers too often. I think that when he joined Thomas Frank, I thought he's got everything. I really like him. He's likable. He's intelligent. He's sophisticated, articulate. Likable. And he's got a good CV, comes with good credentials. But there's one thing that may be missing. I'm not sure he's hard enough. I don't know if he's enough of a bastard to do this horrible job and work in this horrible environment and deal with all the crap that's going to come his way, because he certainly hasn't done that before. That's you get that as Tottenham manager. You could say you get it in all the top clubs. When it doesn't go, the absolute vitriol and pelters that you get constantly is hard. And I don't know. And also you're dealing with bigger paid players, bigger egos in the dressing room who are, very quick to say, oh, no, we're not having him. I mean, David Moyes actually was a good example, I think, because David Moyes had fantastic credentials, very seasoned, and he was actually quite a hard man. But they weren't having him, and they just weren't going to have it. And in the end, he looked incongruous at Manchester United, didn't he? And then he proved all over again why he was a good manager afterwards. But I think that's his only possible shortcoming. He's either going to, you remember when Mourinho turned up and said to the players, you need to be more, I won't use the word on this. This is a very polite, I would on my podcast, but on this podcast,
of course you would.
I'm not going to say it. But he said, you lot need to be, there are not enough see you next Tuesdays in this dressing room. And that's what's missing. And I felt at the time he's probably right, but it also applies to the manager, perhaps even more to the manager. You need that, sadly.
Yeah.
I don't know if Thomas has got it.
Now, let's bring Dele Alli into the conversation. Our friend in Louisville, Kentucky, Daniel Carell. Yeah, hopefully you found a good, quiet corner at your workplace to talk to us. Yeah, what does this Tottenham mess look like from where you're sitting?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm sure it's rough for the fans. I do think the rush to try and sack everybody immediately when things, when teams are struggling is a little much. I mean, I keep thinking about Arsenal a couple of years ago. Wanted to sack Arteta, and I'm glad the board stuck by him because look where they are now. I'm not saying necessarily it'll work out with Thomas Frank, but you gotta. At this point, give him to the end of the season, unless it really goes off the rails, and he loses the locker room, etc. But I just think it's not, you're not doing anybody any benefits by replacing the manager in the middle of the transfer window where the new manager can't come in and get any new players, not refreshments, but you know what I mean, and refreshing the squad. And at this point, better to start thinking about, okay, there's going to be a lot of changes this coming June anyway, with the World Cup coming up June and July. Maybe even World Cup coaches will want to come back to the club game if
Pochettino will be free after the World Cup.
Exactly. So, better to wait till then. Start having those discussions with the agents, right? You can do it all sort of behind the scenes, and maybe you have your person ready to go, come July 1st or July 15th, whenever they're done with the World Cup or with whatever. Maybe they've already made plans to do TV work or something until then. But I think people need to step back. As silly as this is to say, it is just a game, right? It's what was it Klopp who used to say it's the most important of the least important things in life. In
North London at the moment, it is the most important of the most important things in life. Trust me. I'm the closest to it, so I can tell you that. And there's one half that are dancing on somebody's grave and another half that aren't. Bear with me. Somebody's knocked on my door. This is live and direct.
Daniel, you have questions.
Yeah, I had
Then
a couple
let them
things.
be asked.
A couple of things I wanted to ask. I don't know if we want to call my second question a sub question. The first one, I am curious with relying on your expertise in South America, is what more movement can we see through the rest of January, either of players going from South America to Europe or even from, I guess, other countries into England, of South American origin, or the other way around, players coming back to South America trying to shore up whatever position they have ahead of the World Cup.
That last option there, the other way around, is increasingly big, but only to Brazil, but not just Brazilian players. It's really striking the way that the Brazilian league now has much, much more visibility around the rest of South America. So if you want to get back in contention for your national team and you're a South American player in Europe, head for Brazil, and so many are doing it. And that's really behind the Paquetá thing. That's why Paquetá wants now, because he goes back to Flamengo. There's no better platform for ensuring that he'll be in not necessarily the squad, but maybe even the team for the World Cup. His biggest rival is a fellow called Gerson, who left Flamengo in the middle of the year after the Club World Cup, made a bad move to Zenit in Russia, and he's just gone back to Brazil. He's with Cruzeiro. And that's Paquetá has seen this as thinking, well, if Gerson's there, I want to be there as well. We're seeing lots of Colombians and Ecuadorians come into Brazilian football, many of them from Europe, in order to... So this, I think, is a key part of this transfer window. Players repositioning themselves, trying to give their coach... Because you've only got the March friendlies. That's the last chance before the squads are named. So it's a kind of now or never thing. So this is really big. The move of Ryan leaving Vasco to go to Bournemouth, some people have been putting him in contention as a possible for Brazil's World Cup squad. He clearly doesn't think so. If he thought so, he wouldn't be moving now. He would stay with Vasco. and he would keep scoring goals for Vasco, because he's obviously going to go through a bedding in time with Bournemouth. He's not going to score the amount of goals that he scored last year. So this is Hyan, I think, saying, I want the Premier League, I want long term, because if he really thought he had a chance of Brazil's World Cup squad, I think he'd stay with Vasco da Gama for another 6 months.
That's awesome. And I had another question too. I'm curious. I would love to take everybody's on the panel opinion. I don't know if you all can see this on the screen, but this is the logo of my alma mater. And I don't know, Mark said it did make the news over in the UK, but where I went to college, my university, Indiana, just completed the most improbable season in the gridiron football. We call it college football here. They went undefeated. They just won the college football national championship. And they really went from, I mean, people are saying it's a rags to riches story, because it's sort of the equivalent of a team, you know, I don't know. There isn't really even a great European equivalent, but it's a team that was, you know, Indiana fans would have been so happy just to finish 15th in the Premier League. That was sort of the hope, to go from that to winning the whole thing very unexpectedly, just by hiring the right coach, getting a few good players in, and completely changing the culture around. But one thing I did think was an interesting sort of comparison to that was, and I'll ask Tim to do the voice of Mr. Clough, was Nottingham Forest, right? Because they started in the second division. They got promoted. Then they won the first division, right? And then I think the next 2 years won the European Cup both times. I mean, I can't imagine living in Nottingham at that time, just hoping you get promoted, to suddenly within 2 years being European champions. And I'm curious, you know, from everyone's take on you know, what you know about that time or learned about that time, just what it was like to experience that, going from second division to European Cup champions in just a couple of years.
I can't do the voice. I'll leave that to Tim, but I can tell you that when Nottingham Forest were playing the other day, I can't remember who they were playing, but their fans chant in a way that you can hear every flipping word that they're saying, whether it's words you've ever read in the Bible or not. They were literally, it must have been the team that haven't won the Champions League. I can't remember who it was. And they were chanting, yeah.
Possibly Arsenal. I don't believe that they've ever won the Champions League.
Yeah, was it Arsenal? Was it Arsenal, Atalani? When they were
chanting, probably was.
Yeah, we've won the Champions League. We won the Champions League. We won the Champions League. We won the Champions League. Was it Arsenal, Atalani?
It was unfortunately Arsenal. And in the pivoting very swiftly, I will let Tim come back to answer that question. I actually relate the story. I watch American football, which is why I've got these eye bags. My sleep schedule is terrible. I liken it to Leicester almost, because Signetti is that's the name of their coach. He's very polarizing, and he's very unapologetic about who he is and how good he is, which is very opposite of Claudio Ranieri, who was going dilly-ding, dilly-dong, who was a very personable figure. Signetti does not care if you like him or not, whereas Claudio Ranieri was loved by everybody. And this story was like insane. You could, if you scripted it, if you saw it in a movie, you'd say it was fake, because the quarterback of the team, the final was held in Miami. The quarterback of the team tried to walk on at Miami, and they rejected him. And the stadium is literally 2 miles from his house, and he ends up being the one to take them down years later. It's a mind-blowing story. And that team, you never would have backed them to do it. Again, it gives Leicester vibes where they're winning, they're on a roll, and you're like, could they? And they just never lost for the entire season, which is a rare thing. There are only a handful of teams in college football history who can say they've had an undefeated season. I'm an LSU fan, so 2019 LSU will always be a good team ever to me, but yeah, just a little pivot. That was incredible. But as far as Nottingham Forest goes, I've been told not to mention my age, so I'll pass it over now.
But Theo, if you're a regular at the Tottenham Stadium, you'd have seen quite a lot of American NFL matches, wouldn't you? In between watching Beyonce.
I actually did go to Beyonce at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, actually. I did. I haven't seen any. I tell you what I have seen, though, live in person was UCLA versus USC at the, is it the Coliseum, isn't it? Huge,
right,
100,000 people. I mean, it was like a proper derby. You know, it was like going to Celtic Rangers or something. The strength of feeling was incredible. And I remember I was working on a job out there. I was making a TV commercial, and when I told one of the guys at the agency that I was going to it, he was absolutely furious because he'd been to UCLA, and the idea that I had this gold dust Willy Wonka ticket to go to the biggest game, you know, imaginable. He practically didn't speak to me for the next few days. He was so angry, but it was quite an experience. So yeah, college football is no small thing, is it?
It's funny. I've been to Super Bowl
Wow.
40. Yeah, Jacksonville, Florida. It was the Patriots versus. Was it the Browns? Was it Cleveland?
I remember your role on the big day. Do you remember your role on the big day?
My role was to be the coloured boy, wasn't it? Is that
Colour, yeah. Is he the colour guy?
Color commentary, yeah.
I'm the coloured guy. We couldn't. It was Arlo White. It was me, Arlo White. I can't remember who the third person was. In these little cubicles, you know, press cubicles, and the guy walks in, and he's an English guy as well. This is what kills me. And he obviously didn't mean anything, absolutely nothing offensive. But he said, "Where's the coloured guy?" That's all we heard. Where's the coloured guy? And it was either me, Arlo White, blonde-haired, or ginger-haired, and whatnot, and whatever else the other person was. And I was like, I said, I'm just looking for the coloured guy. And it took us a while. Eventually, we got there in any case. But what I was going to say, I went to Super Bowl 40. It was not as exciting, enthralling, thrilling, dramatic, and sociable as the college games that I saw in LA. And they were like not major colleges. It was I can't remember what they were called now, but it wasn't. I didn't see UCLA or USC, but I saw some other colleges play. And the amount of people that were there doing all the cookouts on their tailgates, you know, and all this sort of stuff. There's just a whole flipping atmosphere. Whereas the Super Bowl, it was business. You know, there were pimps coming from Chicago, man, dressed in furs, flowing. Honestly, that was the Super Bowl. Whereas college football, it was wholesome. You know, it was a real positive experience. College basketball, I've seen out there as well. They take college sports so much more seriously, Daniel, and I do wonder when we don't. When people now know...
we don't have that thing of like alma mater, do we? It's absolutely irrelevant for us. There's no identification whatsoever with whatever school or whether you just no.
The first time I ever heard what was then the alma mater was Chuck Berry's "My Ding-a-Ling," and when Chuck Berry says, "Well, we got to do the alma mater," and one thing, what frig is alma mater? In those days, you went to the dictionary, and then it said it's a Latin word. No need to bother about it, but.
Dotun, if I could jump in real quick, because I looked this up for you. The last, so Indiana this year got to play in the Rose Bowl for the first time since the end of the 1967 season, going into 1968.
And for those
do you know what was top of the charts? I just looked it up.
End of 1967.
Yeah. So what was top of the charts January 1st, 1968, or 1st of January, as you would say?
I'm just, this is a shot in the dark. I'm going to go for Inky Pink. No, not Inky Pinky Party Boo. What am I talking about? The Scaffold with Lily the Pink.
I'm going to go with Hey Jude.
Nope, no to both. But Scaffold was on a couple weeks earlier. It was Walk Away Renee by the Four Tops.
Great record.
Oh, right, yeah.
I love that record.
Not bad.
Yeah. Me
Mate,
too.
I was the closest, though. You know,
it's got Tottenham references for me, Theo.
Really?
Because do you remember Willie Morgan? Yeah, do you remember Willie Morgan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know Willie Morgan.
Stadium announcer.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Right.
Lovely bloke.
Yeah, his mum was called Renee.
Oh,
and,
I didn't know that.
It was a game over Christmas time, and she just passed away. And he made a big thing of a tribute to her. He played Walk Away Renee.
How sweet!
Oh,
how sweet!
Oh, why I remember that. But I do. Back to the point of Forest and the fans. It's always amazing to me how quickly human beings adapt to a new situation. And I always feel like when clubs like that are punching so much above their weight, I always feel like I want to pick up and shake the fans it's not going to be like this forever. Enjoy it while it lasts. And so few fans seem to be capable of doing this. They then get angry because the club can't sustain that level of success. When I think the thing of it is you've got to throw everything into enjoying that moment.
That's the crazy thing about football, isn't it? And sport is that wherever you are, you always want to be better. You always want to do more, because that's otherwise kind of what's the point? But it's mad. Look at Charlton Athletic, who had all those years in the Premier League. I remember when they bought Danny Murphy from Liverpool, and Spurs wanted him, and he went to Charlton. And they said, somebody at Charlton, might have even been the manager, Kerbishley, said, well, Charlton are actually a bigger club than Tottenham now, and that's why Danny's chosen us. And then they sacked Kerbishley because he kept finishing mid-table. They sacked him. Yeah. And they've been in absolute oblivion ever since, haven't they? Back to where they came from.
They didn't sack him so much. They made an even worse decision than sacking him. They got him to swap jobs with Alan what's his name at West Ham? Pardew. And Pardew came over. I mean, I sat behind the manager, both managers, and I can tell you this: Pardew did not have a clue. I never once saw him make a decision, an on-field decision, live and direct. Because you look on the pitch, you expect him to be doing something, just stand there, nonplussed. Whereas Alan Kerbishley was very proactive.
Good dancer, though, wasn't he, Alan Pardew, to be fair?
Slick dresser. Don't get me wrong. If that's how you're judging managers nowadays, go on. Put him up there as number one. But otherwise, whilst we've got everybody here, before we wrap up proceedings, let's go around the table, if you don't mind. Just very quickly, any thoughts on West Ham Sunderland? It's a kind of must-win match for West Ham, I suppose. Sunderland, arguably one of the informed teams in the Premier League at the moment. How do you see it going, Daniel?
Well, I think what's interesting is both teams get all their players from the AFCON back, right? So now they've had for sure a couple of weeks to get reintegrated. So that'll be interesting to see how that affects the game. But I think West Ham is really struggling. I think Sunderland has a really good chance of coming away with 3 points.
Arsenal, Man United, Theo?
Arsenal, Man United. I like to think that United are on, are on the up. They're confident, and they'll go there and really give Arsenal. I mean, I hate to say it, Arsenal do look like a machine, but they haven't got to the stage where they're beating all comers. And in fact, they've had a few. I don't know. I think United can get something at Arsenal. I think they really might upset them. They might even win 3-1. There you go.
Atalani, Burnley, Tottenham.
Sorry, I'm struggling to focus back on my question.
I'm being fair now. I'm being fair. He gets to answer the Arsenal one. You get to answer the Tottenham one.
I'm going to resist the temptation to be spiteful. And I think Tottenham will be able to. Well, Turf Moor's tough, actually. I think it's going to be a draw. I won't flatter Tottenham too much. I think it's going to be a draw.
Tim?
He's bending over backwards to Tottenham. I think it's clearly a case of aura farming. Sorry, what was the question?
Bournemouth, Liverpool.
Yes.
As if Areola was to make himself available.
Indeed. Yeah, I'd have him. How on earth Bournemouth do it? And how on earth have they done it? The Bournemouths and the Brentfords. There's just no room for error, is there, with their transfer policy? They've got to be smarter, and they have consistently been smarter. I'm still surprised that Liverpool haven't. Now they've missed out on Mark Gay. I'm surprised they haven't reinforced the defence. And there's a player I keep on. 2 weeks ago, the Ecuadorian press was saying it's a done deal. Joel Ordóñez, he plays for Bruges. It's a terrific centre back. And I wonder if Bruges are holding out for next week's Champions League to see if they can make the if they can get into the later stages of the Champions League. But without, how big do you think the loss of Semenyo is to Bournemouth?
That's massive, isn't it? I think it's even Iraola was not complaining, but he pointed out very, very vociferously the other day. let's wait and see, because with Bournemouth, they're so good at developing players. You don't know who they've got on the wing. They've known
they're just bringing in the Brazilian Hyan, but he's not exactly a like-for-like replacement for Semenyo, and obviously he'll need some time. So it might be a good time to face Bournemouth.
Yeah. Talking of Man City, though, Man City versus Wolves, what do you reckon, Daniel?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they have been, like Tim was saying, they keep reinforcing, bringing in Semenyo, bringing in Guehi. I don't think this will be much of a challenge. Should be 3 points for Man City.
Although Wolves have got to fight for their lives,
Yeah, but I just don't think they have the talent to to match here in this game. But crazier things have happened, right?
Fulham Brighton is intriguing, Theo, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, they're two really good, solid mid-table sides, aren't they? With aspirations to maybe get in the outer reach of the European places. Fulham had these sorts of teams, they go through bad runs. They kind of go through streaks. Fulham had a really bad run earlier in the season, but they're on a pretty good run right now. They get a couple of players back, don't they, from AFCON? But Brighton, I watched that Brighton-Bournemouth game the other night, actually, and both sides looked really impressive to me. Fulham are at home, right, against Brighton?
Yes. Fulham at home against Brighton, yeah.
I think it'll be a draw. A draw.
Atalani, former Arsenal manager, former sacked Arsenal manager, Unai Emery is going up to Newcastle. Will he be able to make you wish that you hadn't sacked him again?
I don't think so. I feel like it feels... I want to say draw again, because these are two teams that I have a lot of respect for. They're two of Arsenal's notorious bogey teams, so I have no choice but to have respect for them. But I think a score draw.
Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Tim, or do you want to go Everton, Leeds?
Brentford, Forest. And Forest are still in a battle, aren't they? They would be worried by the fact that West Ham won at Tottenham, because it just closed that gap a little bit. I don't think Forest will go down. I think that there's enough quality just to keep them in the league. In what I think is, in general, the league, it's not just because Arsenal have every chance of winning it, but I think it's the least interesting Premier League from a playing point of view that I can remember in a long time. I don't think it's a vintage season, and I see this being a kind of maybe a mediocre score draw.
I've kept Everton, Leeds United to myself. Leeds, mate, I wouldn't. And your man Aronson, by the way, Daniel. Well, good luck to you lot in the World Cup, because he's a proper player, and he'll probably be one of your most important players, if not your most important. But Everton seems to have just come unstuck a little bit, and they haven't managed to turn their new stadium into anything like a fortress. But you can have a bank against David Moyes, and he's got proper grafters playing in Everton. I think it'll be Leeds United, though. We'll wait and see. And when we can reconvene, we can go through the tapes again and see who got it right and who got it wrong, yeah? Don't go anywhere. Thank you for watching this Brazilian Shirt Name podcast Thursday special, the Global Soccer Interactive. We're back on Wednesday at 4 p.m. UK time, and then on Thursday again, 4 p.m. UK time. Daniel, thanks very much. Theo, amazing. Where can we listen to your podcast?
Life Goals with Theo Delaney, wherever you get your podcasts, with an array of brilliant guests, including Dotun and Tim. Particularly good episodes.
Well, Dotun's one was even better than Tim's, wasn't it? Really? If you got
I'm not arguing. No, I'm not arguing with that. I've got no argument.
I'm only joking.
I don't need to aura farm. I can, sit back and...
I was aura farming. I beg your pardon. I was. Thank you, Atalanta, for telling us what aura farming is.
I've made a terrible mistake.
You create a monster.
Where can people see what you're writing about and so on? Where can people keep in touch with you, Atalani?
Oh, sorry, something. Arsenal by AT on Instagram and TikTok. So Arsenal by, and then the letters A and T. First two letters of my name.
Brilliant. Okay, let's reconvene again soon. Take care, guys. Thank you for watching the Brazilian Shirt Day podcast.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast is an 1129 production.